Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. It is time for our wavering video. It is week 14 of the fantasy football season. And for the wavering video this week, I will be joined by contributing writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports, Logan Glaser, once again. Logan, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. Excited for another week.
Time for another week, and we were kind of discussing this before you came on here, but it's the last week of the regular season for most leagues, so it's a really crucial week, but also the beginning of the playoffs for TFC and RTFFC leagues on our site, and this is the league playoffs. So it's a really big week for a lot of teams out there this week, most definitely.
For sure. And I really think this is a big waiver week as well because we've got 6 teams on buys. So there's a lot of starters and teams that are going to have buys. So waiver wire is definitely going to be crucial this week. And there's a lot of decent options out there to pick up as well.
Yeah, 6 teams on a bye is just awful for the last week of the season, first week of the playoffs, like I said, for some leagues as well. It's Atlanta, Chicago, Green Bay, Indianapolis, Saints, and Washington Commanders. Those are the 6 teams on a bye. So you're missing Jonathan Taylor this week. The Packers, Aaron Rodgers won't be out there. I know he hasn't been great, but Justin Fields has been phenomenal. He won't be there. So it's a rough week for a lot of teams out there this week, unfortunately. Hopefully they can overcome it and have some success on waivers out here this week, right?
For sure.
All right, let's jump into this and talk about the options for this week. So we'll look at the QB position first. Who do you like as a waiver pickup this week?
Yeah, and I'm going to be looking at Mr. Irrelevant and Brock Purdy, the last pick of the 2022 draft. So he's only 1% owned. You can basically find him in any of your leagues. But it's still a question mark if he's going to be starting for the 49ers because they might be getting Baker Mayfield depending on who picks him up. So it's kind of wait and see, but I doubt Baker would start this week. But Purdy has a great playoff schedule coming up. So weeks 15, 16, 17, 49ers are playing Seattle, Washington, and Las Vegas. That's a perfect playoff 3-week scenario for the 49ers. So I love him in that situation. And he didn't do bad for the 49ers. He went 25 for 37 passing, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's surrounded by so many weapons. Dump off passes to McCaffrey is huge for him, and he can score a lot of points by just doing that.
Yeah, I like another injury replacement, and that's Tyler Huntley with the Baltimore Ravens. So it's not certain how much time Lamar Jackson will miss, but it sounds like he could miss at least a week or 2 with his injury. And Huntley's played well in a starting role in the past. He had 2 games last season when he was starting with 20-plus fantasy points. He's kind of a dual threat like Lamar Jackson. He's not quite the runner as Lamar Jackson. I don't think many quarterbacks are, but he can definitely make plays with his legs, throws the ball pretty well. I think he's a good addition for quarterback-needy teams this week. Again, 6 teams on a bye. Some people hurt, Garoppolo, Jackson. So I think Huntley's a guy I would consider picking up and playing. I think he could do well in the short term. All right, let's move on to running back now, Logan. It's a little better on the waiver wire this week. A lot of these options we're looking at aren't widely available, but they are available in a lot of leagues, and there's a few of them out there. Who do you like?
For sure. The first one I'm going to be looking at is Cam Akers, which kind of surprised me. He's only 68% owned after being a top 2 round draft pick coming into the season, but he was miserable during the middle of the season. And it really didn't look like he was going to be coming back with the Rams. They've kind of mended that. I think what the Rams are really trying to do is boost his trade value for the offseason. So they're going to be getting him a lot of runs. Last week, he had 17 carries. Over the past 3 weeks, he's had 39 carries. He had his first touchdown since week 3. Darrell Henderson's gone. So he's getting a lot of volume in that offense right now. And I really think the Rams are mainly just doing this to boost his trade value during the offseason. So I think they're going to continue to ride him along with Kyren Williams.
Yeah, I was intrigued by Williams a little bit. He played 70% of the snaps the previous week. Then last week it was all Akers.
Yes.
So a little confusing situation, but I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of surprised he's still out there in so many leagues. Who's another pickup for you?
Yeah, another one's going to be Jerick McKinnon for the Chiefs. So he's had 10 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games. He had 10 touches last week, and if you get 10 touches in the Chiefs offense, you can put up points. It's kind of a mixture between rushes and receptions for him. Last week he had 8 rushes, 2 receptions. Weeks before that, he had more receptions than rushes. So he's kind of balanced, but CEH is on the IR. So it's Pacheco's backfield definitely for the Chiefs. But if you can get a guy if you got a buy this week, such as Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones. McKinnon's a good kind of plug-in place for him for this week. So I kind of like that. Can kind of look for around 10 points from him for your lineup.
I think that's a good call, McKinnon. I like him too this week as a streaming option. My two picks, my first one is James Cook with the Buffalo Bills. He's owned in 60% of leagues on our site, so he's available in a little less than half, but he's still out there in some, and he's getting a lot more work lately. Season high 14 carries last week. He has double-digit carries 2 of 3 games. I think he's going to continue to get more touches going forward. They seem to really like his skill set. Devin Singletary's played well, but Buffalo likes to rotate backs, and it looks like Cook's definitely going to be a part of the mix the rest of the way on a very good Bills offense. So I think he definitely has potential going forward. And again, like you said, a lot of teams off this week. I think he's a decent flex play because of that. Another running back I like, and he was picked up in a lot of leagues last week, but he's still out there in some, that's Donovan Knight. So he really looked good in his first start of the year last week. He had 15 carries for 90 yards, also caught 5 passes for 28 yards. He showed his 3-down ability. You know, he's kind of a dual threat there, a good runner and receiver. And I think he could be playing a bigger role in the offense even when Michael Carter is healthy and ready to play. I think Knight could still be a factor the rest of the way. He's really kind of played his way into the mix in that backfield, and he's still available in about 38% of leagues on our site. So this might be the last week you can get him, and I'd go grab him if he's out there. All right, let's move on to receiver now, Logan. Who's a couple receivers that you like on waivers this week?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at Nico Collins. So he's had 36 targets in his last 4 games. I feel like we bring him up a lot in this waiver wire ads, but he's also had 2 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's had 9.8 fantasy points or higher in all 4 of those games. Brandon Cooks might be done for the year. They kind of had a fallout with Cooks as he wanted to be traded. Now he's hurt. But they don't know exactly how long he's going to be out for. So Nico Collins is kind of the number 1 overall. I also really like Nico Collins in dynasty leagues because Houston's going to be looking to upgrade at quarterback most likely through this draft. And Collins probably will be their number 1 wide receiver unless they find a free agent because I bet Brandon Cooks will be gone next year. So Nico Collins would slide into that role. The second one is Isaiah Hodgins. So the Giants wide receivers, they've just been falling down like crazy. You had Wan'Dale Robinson out. Kenny Golladay is kind of battling an injury, and you also had Shepard being out. So Darius Slayton is their number 1 wide receiver, but number 2 is kind of going back and forth between Richie James and Hodgins. But I really like Hodgins. He's a deep play. He's only owned in 1% of leagues, so he's kind of that deep, risky play. But he had 15.4 fantasy points last week, and I expect him to build off of that.
All right, a couple picks for me at receiver. My first one's DJ Chark with the Detroit Lions. So he scored a touchdown in week 12, followed that last week with season highs in receptions and yards. He had 5 catches for 98 yards. I think he's starting to get his footing in the Lions offense. Remember, the team had really high hopes for him early in the year. Then he got banged up with injury, didn't do much for a long time, so teams dropped him. And he's out there in a lot of leagues. He's owned in just 18%. So I think Chark could end up being a factor down the stretch. I know Jameson Williams is there and playing, but he was barely on the field last week. So Chark is still the guy starting opposite Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like him for a big finish to his first season in Detroit. My next pick is another veteran receiver, and that's Corey Davis. So Davis is finally healthy. It showed last week. Got 10 targets in that game against the Vikings, 5 catches for 85 yards. Remember, he was playing really well early in the year before he got hurt. He had double-digit fantasy points 3 of his first 4 games. I think Davis, much like Chark, could be a factor down the stretch. He's available in 74% of leagues as well. So I like Davis a lot going forward in New York. Let's move on to that tight end position that continues to frustrate owners, including myself, because I have I think I have 0 shares of Travis Kelce, actually. So it's been a frustrating position for me. I seem to pick the wrong one every week. Who's your pick this week at tight end?
Yeah, this week I'm going to go Greg Dulcich for Denver. So he's only 56% owned. But Nathaniel Hackett said they kind of want to use Dulcich in a wide receiver role with their offense. So last week, 54.5% of Dulcich routes that he ran was from the slot. So they've been really using the 2-3 tight end formation and kind of moving Dulcich out in that wide receiver role, which has good value for a tight end, especially on that rookie. So Dulcich had 3 great weeks followed by 2-3 bad weeks, but last week he rebounded, and I expect him to rebound moving forward, especially with that wide receiver role that he's kind of now been playing in the last week.
Yeah, I had Dulcich on my bench last week. I had been starting him, like you said, a couple bad games. I benched him, played Hunter Henry, and he was terrible. Worked out well. All right, my pick for tight end is Daniel Bellinger. So he returned from his eye injury in week 13, tied a season high with 5 catches. So he was a big part of the offense right away. And the Giants are really hurting at receiver, like you said. So I think he could be a good play the rest of the year. He's not really a big play threat, but I think he could get the catches and targets, a red zone target as well. So he's out there, and I think he can end up being a factor down the stretch for fantasy teams. He's owned in just 11% of leagues as well. So I think Bellinger, he could be a little frustrating like a lot of these other tight ends, but I expect him to get some targets the rest of the way in that offense. All right, Logan, let's talk about some streaming options on defense. Now, we like to do this every week, give everybody a look at some streaming options to use on defense, because that's what a lot of owners like to do. So who's your pick this week as a streamer?
Yeah, this week I'm going to stream the Chiefs defense. They have actually been a very good defense so far this year. They get lots of sacks and turn over the ball well, and they're going up against Russell Wilson and Denver, who are one of the worst offenses so far. They just have not gelled. Running game hasn't been there. Passing game hasn't been there. Overall, as an offense, they have really struggled. So I expect the Chiefs defense to get on top of Russell Wilson, pressure him, force him into some turnovers, along with some sacks.
Anybody playing the Denver is a good defense.
Yes. We would not have guessed that at the beginning of the season with that offense, but here we are with Seattle being a top offense and Denver being a bottom offense.
Yeah, bizarro world. All right, my streamer is the Cincinnati Bengals. So they're owned in just 18% of leagues. They scored 6 fantasy points against the Browns in week 8. That's who they're playing this week. Not exactly a high-flying Browns offense. Deshaun Watson returned last week. Definitely showed the rust. I thought he looked a little shaky, and I think it could be a little bit of a while before he gets up to speed again and gets on the same page with all those receivers. And last week, the Bengals played the Chiefs, held them to 24 points. That's a really high-powered Chiefs pass attack and running game as well. So I think that defense is really playing well in Cincinnati. Their pass defense is really good too, and I think Watson's going to have some struggles there. So that's my pick for the streamer this week. All right, Logan. Appreciate you joining me once again on the Wavering Show. Good luck to you as you navigate your waivers, and good luck in all your games.
You as well. Yep, big week.
Should be a good week. Should be a lot of fun. Hopefully, a lot of teams have success this week. All right, Logan.
Next week we'll have Saturday games as well. So this will be the last week without Saturday.
You gotta like that. More football, the better when it's on.
Exactly.
I like that. And they're talking about next year. They're going to do like a Black Friday game too during the holidays. I heard that too.
That could be fun. Yeah, I'd like that.
Definitely.
Primetime games are better.
Yep, I agree. Hopefully they're not as bad as a lot of these primetime Thursday games have been, though. So we'll see. All right, I digress. All right, Logan, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, this has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports.
And this has been Logan Glaser from RealTime Fantasy Sports.
Good luck in Week 14, everyone.